The three Vees appeared for only a few short moments in the Hazbin Hotel pilot, but VivziePop has said that these overlords, Valentino and Vox in particular, are primary antagonists for the show. With that in mind, I thought now would be a good time to talk about everything we know about these demonic overlords. I'm Deepcut, welcome back to Cartoon Universe, and I like to think of us as friends, but some of you haven't clicked the subscribe button. Really makes you think. Overlords are a class of demons in Hazbin Hotel and Helluva boss that, as the name suggests, lord over the lesser demons in some way. The term overlord is a bit loosely applied by the characters within the show and by the crew who work on it, and can mean anything from natural-born royalty such as Stolas to an earthborn sinner, with the title being more for powerful demons whether they actually rule over anyone or not, as with Alastor, who doesn't actually rule over anybody. Until relatively recently in Hell's history, the Seven Rings were ruled by the same overlords for centuries. In the 1940s, Alastor manifested in Hell and almost immediately began to topple over these overlords. We are unsure how he did this, whether it was by robbing them of their power, imprisoning them in some way, or using something like an angel's weapon to kill them. Despite knocking over these overlords, Alastor has no interest in their power or their business dealings, it would seem, so it left a vacuum in Hell that new Earthborn sinners could fill in without the previous overlords keeping them down. This allowed for Vox, Valentino, and Velvet to all manifest in Hell and rise through the ranks of the hierarchy. The three of them act as a sort of surrogate family, with Velvet being the daughter, and Valentino and Vox being something akin to two gay dads. Vox runs the television industry and seems to use his technology and other resources to help propel the other two's empires, with Valentino being in the adult film industry and Velvet being in social media. Vox was likely the first of these three to manifest in Hell, probably in the 1960s when TV was really starting to take over in America. He could have been a pioneer of the industry or just an enthusiast who came to Hell with the knowledge of how to exploit it and form his empire. Alastor is noted as being the kind of person who thinks that everything reached its high point while he was alive, and that anything that came after him or his respective mediums is just worse. Because of that, he despises TV and Vox himself, choosing instead to believe that the radio is better. Unlike Alastor, Vox seems to have an interest in growing and adapting with the times. When he took over the TV industry in Hell, he didn't just stop growing there. I believe that at some time in the 70s, Valentino manifested in Hell, and that was when the adult film industry really took off in America. And like Vox, Valentino would come to Hell with the right knowledge on how to build the industry. The two likely formed the romantic relationship early on, and Vox would use his existing technology and market chains to start distributing the adult films Valentino would produce. Valentino would grow beyond that by also getting into other dirty dealings, both related to adult entertainment and other things outside of it, such as the drug trade. Despite Vox and Valentino seemingly being a couple, Valentino at the very least still seeks thrills outside of that relationship, as we can see that his relationship with Angel is definitely sexual. At some point more recently, in the last decade or so, Velvet would have died on Earth and manifested in Hell, bringing with her all of the information of social media and how to exploit it. As of now, it is uncertain why exactly Vox chose to not just make Velvet something of a surrogate daughter, but to elevate her to the level of an overlord. While it is understandable that he wants to grow with the times and not be outcompeted by the new, the common tactic for this is to simply exploit what the new industry is yourself. I don't imagine he would have to have made Velvet or Valentino actual overlords to accomplish anything. He could have just had them as high-ranking officials in his company for a while. The fact that he chose these two to start something of a family with indicates that he has a sentimental side that may be explored somewhere in the show. That being said, the relationship between Vox and Valentino is far from perfect. While we only get small glimpses of these characters in the pilot, several Hazbin Hotel and Helluva boss characters have Instagram accounts that give you insight into the characters' lives. These are not meant to be taken as canon, but are something of a second-level canon. They are more or less true until proven false by something in the show, or at the very least they capture the essence of the truth in some way. In this particular case, I am referencing a story that took place across several of these characters' accounts that showcase Valentino and Vox getting into a fight. In an Instagram post from one of these characters, we see that Valentino is very abusive to Vox, smashing his screen for simply getting his order wrong with a meal. At some point, Valentino's actual Instagram account disappeared. All of the characters on Instagram do not refer to the platform as Instagram, but as Voxtagram, which is Hell's version of Instagram developed by Vox and Velvet. Because Vox essentially owns the social media sites in Hell, he was able to terminate Valentino's account. So of course the Hazbin Hotel and Helluva Boss crew members who run these accounts terminated Valentino's in real life. During this time, Velvet discussed with other characters how she wants people to respect Valentino and Vox's situation in regards to breaking up. Later, however, Valentino's account was reinstated, with it being indicated that he and Vox had made up, and that this breakup that they had was a very common occurrence between them, something we will likely get more of in the show. Vox had the screen that makes up his face replaced at this point, something he may often have to do as well. Interestingly, this TV that makes up his face can also be used to show people video games that he is playing, with the game seemingly being played through his mind as opposed to with a controller. He also has the power to appear on any television screen in Hell and travel through them, something likely made possible through another power of his, which is to turn himself into electricity and travel that way. In the prequel comic where we see a day in the life of Alastor, Vox showcases this power when Alastor stops to look at a screen, with Vox taking a strange interest in watching Alastor through that screen. Some people think that Vox has a romantic interest in Alastor due to a comment made by Vees about him being in love with Alastor. However, my understanding of the situation is that many fans misinterpreted Vees' joke about how fixated Vox was on Alastor in this comic, with this being perhaps one of the reasons that Vees says that people shouldn't quote her as canon. Instead, I think Vox's interest in Alastor can stem from one of two reasons. First, it is possible that Vox simply thinks that Alastor is the only person in the city who isn't under his influence, and of course he wants him to be. Alastor doesn't own a TV, I imagine, but in the comic and in the pilot he stops to see what's happening on the television, and Vox may be hoping that he is slowly winning Alastor over and gaining control over him. The second option is that Vox may have hopes to revitalize radio. Unlike Alastor, Vox believes in changing with the times, and that doesn't have to just mean television. Alastor is known as the Radio Demon, and was said by Vaggie to have broadcast his carnage all over Hell. While this may be a bit of a reach, it says to me that Alastor ultimately controls the radio industry, with virtually no one else being able to get in on that. Vox's interest in Alastor may be more practical. It may be that Vox wants to open up that radio industry, or whatever Alastor does with his powers, to all the money-making options he has at his disposal. Valentino manifested as a moth demon, which is a bit odd because Vaggie is also modeled after a moth, and the two look nothing alike. That being said, Earthborn Sinner species types are not the same as the natural-born species types in Hell. All imps are going to look similar because they come from similar breeds, but demons who are related or share the same theme can look wildly different, as there is seemingly less rules or restrictions on how Earthborn Sinners can look. Velvet, finally, looks like one of those Japanese cafe cosplay characters, indicating that may be what she was doing with social media during her living life, thus manifesting in Hell as what was essentially her cosplay persona. But so far, this is just speculation. Let me know what you guys think, and if there's anything I missed, and I'll see you next time.